Hello and welcome to the RYLACast, the official podcast of Camp RYLA, Rotary District 5810. My name is Greg Tepper. That was a gift that was given to me by my parents on my birthday. My co-host for the evening, my co-host on every evening except like 3 that we've done this. He's the man they call Josey Andrew S.
Well, hello, Greg. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I should chime in because I hadn't been introduced yet, but I think it's every episode, but 3, maybe 4.
Yeah, I'd need to look it up. I know I did like one solo show. You'd have to go back in
Yeah,
the archives and figure this out. Did you know that our next episode is going to be our 70th episode?
I did not know that.
70 episodes. So after tonight,
70.
we'll have done 69 of them. It's a I don't know. The little podcast that could, I suppose.
Yeah, shout out
It's
to our listeners.
yeah.
Y'all keep the ball rolling.
We literally would not do it if you guys didn't listen to it. And you guys have listened to it 69 times and counting. So we appreciate you doing that. This is the RYLAcast, the official podcast of Camp RYLA, Rotary District 5810. We do thank you for spending a little bit of your day with us. Coming up here in just a little bit, we caught up with in a lot of ways, the great Oz of Camp RYLA,
Hmm.
like Ken Wilson. Ken Wilson is, do you know what he is? Like, I'm going to make a bunch of different references here.
Okay.
I call him the Great Oz because he is the man behind the curtain. But also, describe him as, and I'm going to be dating myself here. If anybody has seen the Quentin Tarantino film Pulp Fiction,
Hmm.
there's a character portrayed by the great Harvey Keitel, who's known as the Winston Wolfe, and he's the fixer. He's the guy who
Yes.
comes in and gets things done. Hairy situations, he's got it. That's Ken Wilson to me.
That's Ken Wilson. That's a
He's our
great,
Winston Wolfe. He needs to
yes.
show up in the tuxedo. And stay tuned for this interview because you will find out what Josey and I are going to be calling him at camp. Coming up
How
here.
about that for a tease?
How's that for a tease? Before we get into my big segment, Josey, I do want to ask you about the latest filing from the Department of Justice,
The DOJ.
um, the DOJ, as it were. Um, are you familiar at all with what's going on with their antitrust suit that they have filed against Apple? I promise this is going somewhere.
I am not. I will
Okay.
admit I'm not.
So the US government is filing this pretty big, sprawling antitrust suit against Apple, and basically talking about how they feel like they have a monopoly. They're doing things to create a monopolistic situation, especially in the smartphone industry. And one of the things that they mention is, I'll read directly from the from this suit. Quote, many non-iPhone users also experience social stigma, exclusion, and blame for, quote, breaking chats, end quote, where other participants use iPhone. Josey, the
Yes.
government is suing Apple over the green bubble.
That is incredible. Okay.
Do you have some green bubbles in your life?
I've, man, this probably says more about me than it does about them, but I've tried to either purge them from my life or convert them over to the blue bubble. Um,
Um, yeah, there are prominent people that I work with,
mhm.
like close friends and colleagues who are green bubbles.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, like I I, I see both sides of it. That I
Uh-huh.
certainly understand where the government is coming from because I do feel like ostracizing them. I do feel like shaming them.
Have
Uh,
have you ever had a green bubble phone as
no.
your primary? Okay. I've
I mean, not in the iMessage, not in the Blue Bubble era, not since they did that. I mean, I pre iPhone, I had I did have I had a slide phone actually, super cool.
Okay. Okay.
It's great. I'm very cool and very young.
Yes.
But I've been an iPhone guy for quite a while. I'm Blue Bubble gang because I ain't ruining a group chat.
So I've come from the other side.
Oh,
Um,
you're a converted green bubble.
I'm a converted early adopter. So, but I bought into the green bubble. Oh, it's more customizable, yada yada yada. And I was like, cool. And then I got the phone. I was like, I am not in any way, shape, or form qualified to customize this. I would like something that works.
So and he will not listen to this. So I feel okay with this. My father is
Hmm.
an Android guy.
Okay.
And that's fine. I don't text my dad very often. However, one of the things is that if you send photos or videos, like they
Mm,
come across super janky,
like a potato.
like a potato. And so, like, I've just been like, Dad, I'm just going to text mom because mom's got an iPhone. Um, anyway, thank you to the U.S. government focusing on what's important, which is justice for green bubbles. It's the Department of Justice for Green Bubbles. All right, Josey, let's get into the big segment. Josey, you work on the railroad.
All the live long day.
I work in a very different industry. I work in the leering press, in
Yes.
the media sphere.
Very important
Um,
industry.
and let me ask you just a broad question. Could you say a sentence? You don't have to. Can just be a yes no question. Could you say a sentence that people in your industry would immediately understand that I would have no idea what you were talking about?
Okay, let me try
Oh,
to
you're
think
gonna try.
about
Okay, I like
this. I'm
this.
gonna try. Is that okay? Oh,
I
oh,
didn't.
did you
Yeah.
just want to guess? Did you just want to
Oh, I
guess?
mean, if you're willing to try, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but if you're willing to try, I'm gonna let you.
Okay, okay. So let's see, a sentence that makes sense that you might not understand. You might understand, and that'll be okay. Okay, so the grades approaching the station through the special track work within the throat are a little bit too high for the train to negotiate that. So we need to optimize that a little bit as the so the we have fewer design exceptions as we enter into the station.
Okay.
How's that?
I I have a very I think if I were to write that if you were to write that down for me, I could
Hmm.
probably figure it out, but
Okay.
I have no idea what you just said basically.
Okay, perfect.
And so what we're talking about here is jargon, right? And
Okay.
I think every industry has it. Every industry
Hmm.
has like their way of talking, their way of communicating in a way that is kind of nuanced to their own specific their own specific way of doing business. And I want to direct you to an article on the extremely generic website business.com.
Okay.
This is the first for the RYLACast. Business.com. This has got to be a fake website. Honestly, I'm feeling bad now introducing this article, but the headline from Mark Fairlie is Why Speaking in Jargon Doesn't Make You Look Smarter. And he talks a lot about the IT department, and essentially
Mm,
in IT, there's just a lot of people who use that technical jargon in a way that kind of causes problems. A, because people are not going to understand it, or B, by using that jargon, they may actually not be using the right phrase. For example, this guy used the example of Bluetooth. Bluetooth is a very specific, like patented form of technology that now we kind of use Bluetooth. People use Bluetooth as like a catch-all for like all like wireless like communication between devices when it may not
okay.
actually be exactly what we're talking about. So it's using a term inaccurately. It's using a buzzy word. He I'm going to read this paragraph again out loud because this gave me a headache the first time I mentioned it. Office culture has for decades been blighted by jargon that has replaced perfectly usable words and phrases in English. All right, everybody, if you don't want to hear this, you may want to block this out. I'm about to give some people a headache. Phrases like disrupt, leverage, paradigm shift, synergy, touch base, drill down, think outside the box, blue sky thinking, and best practices are now increasingly grown in workplace word map. That is, oh my gosh.
Do you have that in your industry? Those tired head responses.
Yes,
That's a
especially
no.
like so I'm on the editorial side of my office, and so I'm like on the content creation side. But especially when I get into like meetings with like that, they drag the cloud in for the business meeting, right? They drag me
Mm.
in. I swear there are words that I'm just like that doesn't mean anything. You're wrong. Like I always try to pick up new business words and try to like work them in there. Synergy is a big one. Lift is a big one
Is
too.
that a big lift? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Or it's like we want to see if maybe this account can give us some lift, if there's lift there.
Oh,
Oh
okay.
yeah. No,
Okay.
it's a lot. Anyway, all that is to say that there are significant risks to using office jargon. And certainly even if jargon's intended to be used as shorthand, there's a lot of people who do it essentially just to kind of sound smart. And but there can be problems. For example, a survey by communications company InReach found that 90% of people believe business jargon is used by people who want to, quote, cover up the fact they have no idea what they're doing, end quote. So the jig is up, right? 90% of people are like, no, you're using that because you don't actually know what's going on.
Right.
Nearly 50% find such language annoying, and over 20% would be turned off in a job interview if the employer repeatedly used jargon. Um, on Slack, do you use Slack?
We're not a Slack.
Okay.
I
My
use it for RYLA, but that's it.
we use Slack in my company. They said that Slack did a study, and they found that more than 60% of respondents find it off-putting when colleagues use workplace jargon in messages. And then, so they did a whole thing of like, do you know what this word means, basically? And the buzzword that was least commonly known was let's see, sweep the floors, SMB, which means small and medium businesses, ideate, blue sky thinking, synergy, and then I do have to say this because I say this a lot. At the end of the day, which is a little bit that's a little jargony. I might push back a little bit because I use that. Anyway,
Yeah.
all that is to say is that you're talking about once again barriers to effective communication by using jargon and using this type of stuff that maybe is not necessarily accomplishing the goal that it should, that you're hoping that it will. And so they have some do's and some don'ts. Basically, they kind of say basically lack of clarity and the off-putting nature of office jargon using buzzwords company wide can come at a price. So they encourage this article says speak everyday language, keep it short. Oh my gosh, yes. What I've as I hello professional talker guy here, a
Hmm.
professional loudmouth. What I have found is that in leadership situations, the less like shorter is better. The fewer words you can say, the better it'll be. Is that to get your point across? Um, Use simple words instead of telling your direct reports how to quote execute a strategy. You can just say, "Here's how you do something." You know, like it's.
That
Um,
makes sense.
and there's certainly part of it, especially when you're writing. I think it's important to edit yourself. Like it's important to just
Mm.
go through and just be like, all right, is this effectively communicating what I want to without using jargon? And then they also mentioned this is just for food for thought is to hold back on emojis. People
Oh.
say that emojis are do not you're not supposed to use emojis in business settings and in leadership settings. Your mileage may vary on that, but I do think the point is well taken that overall, especially business jargon, and especially if you're using just jargon kind of for the sake of it and kind of to be like, oh, I know what I'm talking about. Look at all these big words I know.
Mhm.
Then I think that can be off-putting and can certainly make your job and make your task a little bit tougher in the end. So let's all self-edit on our jargon.
Okay, that's good. I'm really still hung up on the emojis. I'm a big
Yeah.
GIF guy. So
Oh,
that
you are a
probably,
big GIF guy. As somebody who's in a couple of group chats with you, all in blue tech or all in blue bubbles, um, you are a GIF guy.
buddy, those GIFs don't stop when I put on my big boy business pants. I'm a GIF guy in the office.
Okay, so like, would you send a gift like to your superior?
Um, I have sent GIFs in group messages with my superior,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
feels like a step.
That does feel like a step. That feels like you're really putting yourself out there.
I'm really putting myself. Yes, thanks, Craig. I am putting
Um,
myself out there.
I feel like you're stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I am.
Anyway,
That's
there's a
great.
little
That's great.
little jargon talk. So ideate on that, and we'll circle back on that. Now, coming up here in just a moment, we will hear from Ken Wilson, the man behind the scenes who helps Camp Run. I had a great conversation with him. I want to invite you to go to our website, RYLA5810.org. Camp is like it's like 2 months from today.
Thank you for that. That's very
Ooh, you
quick.
know what? Hold on, let me see this. I'm gonna count. One. You're listening to live coverage of me counting how many weeks till camp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's less than 9 weeks.
Okay.
It's
That
less than nine
is
weeks to camp.
information I probably needed. Was not really ready to receive at this moment.
Yeah. But my job as a communicator is to give you the information you need, not the information you want.
Oh, okay. Wow. I'm gonna
And
sit up
that
a little straighter in my chair now. I feel like I just got yelled at.
and that is I'm looking for more um, jargon. And that is clear thinking and paradigm shifting.
Clear eyes, full hearts.
RYLA5810.org if you want to shift the paradigm. Go check it out there. Here's our conversation. Had a great conversation with Ken Wilson. Here's our conversation with Ken Wilson here on the RYLAcast. Oh, Josey,
Oh, Greg.
we scan up and down our Rolodex because we're always looking for high quality guests to bring in for the RYLAcast.
And we have a
Uh,
Rolodex.
and we have a Rolodex. That's not a dated reference at all. We're showing our age. But we have finally landed a big fish here on the
We have.
RYLAcast. We're pleased to be joined by our friend, Ken Wilson. Ken, how are you?
I'm good. Good evening.
Where do we find you today?
I am on our family ranch. I'm about an hour and a half north of Dallas. Just a little piece here on a larger 800-acre ranch with cattle and donkeys and so forth. And this will be my future retirement home at some point here.
So
Looking forward to that.
you are home on the range, is what you're
I am
saying.
home on the range or on
Okay.
the ranch.
Yeah, so we both have two small children at home, so we're all surrounded by wild animals, is what you're saying.
Well, and I have two grandchildren in
Yeah.
Dallas and two in Minnesota, so I'm surrounded by them also. So
Ken, well, I'm fascinated to talk with you in the context of this podcast, specifically because I find your RYLA story and your commitment to the program really admirable. And I'm curious if you would tell folks how you came to be involved with this program, since you are such a mainstay here.
well, this goes back a long way. I go back to almost the beginning of RYLA. I was working in volunteering in scouting with Dr. Dana Mackison He was actually one of my assistant scoutmasters, and we traveled and did all sorts of events around the country and put on many different activities and programs. And I knew that he had this camp. He would refer to it as my youth leadership camp, my youth, and we really never got into a lot of detail. And at that point, we had a couple hundred boys in the troop, and I had at that I think it was about 50 some assistant scoutmasters. So I had a full-time job with that. I didn't have any more time to go do anything else. But about the time I handed those reins off to some other unsuspecting future scoutmaster and turned that over to him, Dana came around and said, "Hey, now you've got some free time. You want to take part with RYLA." And I worked originally simply behind the scenes. I assisted back when we created a website, when websites were a brand new thing. There was, really cheesy looking, layout of the screen and so forth, but we basically made the forums and so forth available for people on the web. And after a few years of doing that, then I got recruited to come for a week, and I jumped into a very minor role for my first year as a cabin counselor.
Yes.
Yeah, just a
Just a small role.
just a small role. But Robert Scott, who we all know and love as a RYLA alum, was one of my campers. And then my second year, I had Tevin and my mind has just gone blank. There's a couple others. One's the doctor in New York that were in my cabin. And then I moved from there to helping all of the operational things. And again, kind of back behind the scenes, but at camp.
Frank, is that
Frank, yes.
Okay.
Kazumoto. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, I did not know your first year. So Robert's year would have been my camper year in 2006. So I didn't know that's where both of our RYLA stories started. If I can steal some of your thunder.
Yeah. No, that's it. So that's what got me to camp, and then have been doing the, I'll call it operational things there at the office ever since.
So outside of camp, what do you do? What's your day to day? As maybe running the ranch up there in North Texas. What's your day to day look like? Your day job.
I am either traveling or working on Zoom calls. I'm senior director of technical selling at a software company that provides software for the legal departments of the biggest corporations in the world. And so I get to meet with the Morgan Stanleys and the Prudentials and the NFL and lots of other interesting customers globally. And so that's what I do for my day job. But the RYLA activities kind of let me kind of get grounded each year, kind of back into pure fun things, and the whole concept of being focused on service as opposed to commerce. My rest of the year work-wise is all commerce related, but get to focus on the students for several weeks with camp.
Yeah, because that's something that I'm very interested in, is what keeps you coming back, because anybody who sees Ken at camp, the man is working his tail off. We're all working hard.
It's all magic. It's all magic. I have a bunch of things that make it look like I'm doing a lot of crucial things, but I have it down to a science. I'm done about 5 minutes after camp has started. I've got everything done. I just sit at my computer and make it look like I'm busy. But
it is magic to watch.
It is magic.
For anybody who's never seen Ken Wilson work at camp. It's suddenly poof, there's 50 things done, and he's just like, yeah, that was easy. So then,
well, that's because if you keep doing it over and over, probably the Saturday morning or Friday morning, whatever the last day of camp is, we've rotated over the years what the starting day is. That last morning, I have a set of things that I have to get finished up then. But I kind of sit down and what worked and what didn't work. What do I want to change for next year? So that I kind of come in with a plan each year. Dana's, alphabet soup, build your plan, work your plan, evaluate your plan, and rework it. So that literally is what I do. I each ending last day is to figure out what worked well that week and figure out what I need to do the next week. And you started to ask, why do I come back? It's really two things. It's the impact on the students. We wouldn't do it at all if it wasn't that. But I've been around long enough to see so many alums who started as Josey did, as a camper, then an assistant counselor, and then kind of a junior alum, and then working on up through the program, and watching people grow and really kind of feeling like that extended family. I've kidded Josey for many years that I kind of considered him another son, and because we got to work for many years in the back of the rec hall with the sound and the computer systems and trying to make sure that they were actually working together and the communications to the stage and so forth. So it has to start with the students, because if we don't have them and watching them grow and and going from the first night and the big eyes and like, what did I do and why did I do this? My mom made me do it, to wrapping up and they really don't want to go home at the finish of the week. And so that's a big part of it. But then the family, it's getting back together, the family reunion every time we get together, whether it's day 7, something during the winter, the Christmas, we used to have the Christmas parties and so forth. And then of course, the preparation and delivery of camp.
I will say, Ken, that for those of you listening and familiar with camp, the back of any room can be kind of lonely. Ken was talking about how he and I tried to figure out the sound and making things work together. Ken's office is in the back of the room, and the sound booth is in the back of one room. And there, Ken, you're always there, whether it's troubleshooting, whether it's, hey, I need this thing, you turn the corner and Ken's like, hey, you looking for this? And I'd say that you kind of launching you into, over the past years, your time at camp. I'm interested to hear your take and your opinion on kind of how things have changed, if at all, and your experience with that.
So that's a really interesting question. I love that question because there's an element to camp that is never changing. That the service to the students, the caring of the students, the growth of the students, the basic fundamentals of what we take them throughout the week doesn't change. And obviously, for many years, both Mark and Dana, provided a continuity constant to that. And Dana's taken over and kept a constant to that. But all of the other surrounding alumni leaders bring their own little flavor, their own little twist to it that keeps it fresh, even for those that have been working with it for years. Every year's camp is just a little tiny bit different. Almost always, it's like, oh, wow, we should have done that before because it's just a little bit better. There was something else that whoever it was, whether it's TAP leading, keeping track of camp, making sure that everything is running and everybody's happy and all of the potties are flushing and everything's working, but just the little things, it's like, oh, wow, that worked so much better this year. Or we get a curveball that we haven't really dealt with before, but we're ready because we've dealt with enough different kinds of curveballs. That one was new, but so that's that constant, yet every year has a little bit of color to it, a little flavor to it that's a little bit different.
That's fascinating. I agree. I was just very interested in your take on that. Now comes the moment in our interview where we give our guests the floor. So the floor is yours to plug something, anything. Take it away.
So I was kind of warned that this might come up, and um, I no, I'm kind of stammering a little bit. What I would challenge is every alumni that is, listening to this, or somebody tells them to, pay attention to the podcast, whether you were an alumni staff, whether you were an AC, doesn't matter. If you were in the program and you were able to gain the experience and understand what that's all about, is to try to come back and try to contribute. There are always places to help. And over the years, when I first started, all of the counselors were Rotarians because there weren't any youth who'd come up far enough. And then, Paul Murray was one of the very first campers. So he was one of the first ones to be part of the staff. But now all of our counselors are alums. And not all of them were ACs. Not all of them were, serving lots of years. Some folks have just come back and said, hey, I kind of got my life under control. I've got either, the kids are here, but they're under control, or I don't have kids, or the kids have grown up and I'm ready to give some time back. And so I would encourage them to do that. If there's one thing that we need is that new blood, because everybody hits phases in life. And so some folks, newly married, that their spouse doesn't understand RYLA, they need to kind of step away for a little while, and they're not available, or they get new little kids at home, and both parents aren't RYLArians, therefore they don't bring their kids and have their kids participating. Josey has with that, and so they have to step away for a little while. But we need the new blood. We need more people to come in. So my plea is for folks to step up, come help out. Even if you can only come out for a couple of days, the crew, which is what we, the Jim and his staff can always use some extra strong arms and strong backs of folks that can come spend a couple of days setting things up and taking things down. You don't have to be available the entire week, but come find a way to reconnect with the family and participate. So that's my 2 cents.
I think that's an excellent point. As somebody who did that as well, and who had to have a conversation with his wife that said, "Hey, here's this program full of crazy people. I'm gonna go spend a week with them." The conversation,
it's really safe. Don't worry.
I promise you, yeah, it'll be great. And for some reason, I'll be real emotional when I come home, but it's just because I'm tired and emotional. All right, finally, I think people who come to camp, who have been around the program, they know Ken Wilson, the fixer. They know Ken Wilson, the man who can get you things. We know you in this way around camp. I want to know about another role. What is Ken Wilson, the grandfather, like? Because that feels like, I don't know. That's a different role. And I'm curious what Ken Wilson grandpa is like.
So you're looking at Pop.
I love that.
Pop.
And that was kind of my late father was Pop to my sons. And my great grandfather was my Pop. So it's kind of a continuation of that. I have 3 grandsons and a granddaughter, and do they wear me out physically? Just if a whole day, I went to the beach, spent a whole week with them. I was completely exhausted, but I wouldn't have traded a minute of it. It's so amazing to not have the day-to-day parent responsibility. You're kind of a parent responsible when you're with them and so forth. And we babysit, and I'm going to have them up for a couple of days around Easter. But there's a different role that you play. You're not the parent. You can try to provide them some guidance. My oldest one is only 5 years old, but he and I love to kind of talk about some bigger things. And it's one of the most remarkable things I've had in my life. You can't have grandkids if you haven't had kids, so I had to have the kids first, but would not trade the grandfather role for anything.
I'm not hearing a lot of spoiling the kids. The grandkids, they get spoiled.
Uh, a
Is that
little
grandma's
bit,
job?
but they're no, they're their parents spoiled them pretty well.
Okay.
They don't need a whole lot of extra spoiling by
By Pop Pop.
grandparents. Yeah, Pop and Gigi. So
Can we call you Pop Pop?
that's certainly fine. That's
That's how I'm going to address you at camp this summer.
there we go.
He is Ken Wilson. Ken, we sure appreciate your time and looking forward to seeing you again this summer.
Can't wait. Bring it on.
There he is, Ken Wilson, our esteemed guest here on the RYLACast. Pop Pop.
Pop Pop.
I'm just gonna call him Pop Pop. I wouldn't be my granddad.
He
Pretty
is.
awesome. Kind of is in a lot of ways. Anyway, I'm far too old to be his grandson, and also he wouldn't want that. I think I'll speak on behalf of Ken. he don't want that. Now, Josey, maybe. Speaking of which, let's go over to Andrew Josey Utz to take us home. Take us home, Josey.
Well, thank you, Greg. Are you familiar? So it's different than your business.com, which does feel like a fake website, but it also promises weekly 5-minute business advice.
Honestly, I got to be honest. I think there's something to be said about the fact that I went to business.com to learn about like synergy and like efforting and stuff like that, like in a bunch of like nonsense business words. I think that's telling.
Business.com can help your business grow. That's all.
Thanks, business.com.
I find myself subscribed to a Substack from Gustavo Rossetti, and I may have brought his name up on previous podcasts, but he's created this brand called Fearless Culture, and it's leadership emails and things delivered to your inbox. And I took the bait. So still kind of in a trial period, but so far what he writes is interesting to me. So March 24th, he put out a newsletter, and it's called How to Build a Culture of Mastery. 5 strategies to unlock people's potential and lead your organization to new heights.
Organization.
Your organization,
Right, okay.
New heights.
Feeling targeted. Okay.
And I'm obsessed at this one concept I'll get to, but he basically says that there are 3 key elements that drive us to work, not physically drive us, but
Internal combustion engines,
yes, done.
hang gliders, and hang glider accessories.
Yeah, done. I don't even need to do my little
I don't even
segment.
need a third.
Purpose, autonomy, and mastery. And purpose and autonomy are kind of the most heavily talked about ones. But mastery is one that he kind of challenges is the key to some motivation within the company. And are you familiar with Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule?
I am.
Do something for 10,000 hours and you can become a master at it. Well, apparently that's been debunked.
You know what? I had read something about that. I'd heard that like it's not what I read, and I don't know if I'm just taking your entire shtick here, but what I had read was that like the idea is a sound one in the sense of like you need to have a dedicated amount of time to get to like to become an expert on something. But the idea of like you're not an expert at 9,998 hours and you are an expert at 10,001 hours is like it's kind of too cute. Like it's too effective on a book, you know.
Yeah, like it's too storybook.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought the same thing. You didn't steal my thunder. But this idea of mastery, I like to think of as something else that I've fallen in love with over the last couple of years is continuous improvement. And it's the idea that you're continually improving. Go figure, continuous improvement, continually improving. Um, and I think that's a really interesting concept, and I'll relate it here to mastery in a minute. But the idea that if you just improve, and improvement doesn't have to be, one like a broad scale improvement each day, but if you do one thing better every day and you're constantly striving to be better, you will either, be a better leader. In terms of your definitions, I'm not saying there's a definition of broad, achieve this 10,000 hour leadership training and you're a leader thing. But the idea that if you continuously improve, you will better yourself and you will better the team around you. And so these 5 principles of mastery from Gustavo Rossetti. One, mastery is a mindset, and it's like be curious. That piece of it. Mastery is painful. You've got to have grit because you're gonna have some setbacks. Learning to master something. Mastery requires unlearning. Some intellectual humility, maybe unlearning a habit that you've done. If you've always done one thing a certain way and there's a more effective way to do it, you're going to have to unlearn the way you've done it. Mastery is risky. You've got a lot of risk associated with experimentation. And then mastery never ends. And this is where I really like that continuous improvement idea.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this harmonious passion and you're just constantly striving to better yourself. And not necessarily the goal that you're reaching is not finite, but the goal is improving yourself.
Yeah, it's getting better and finding a way to then kind of build on that using that compounding interest, so to speak, and like to continue to grind on. So yeah, I like that. And that does feel like, again, like you're thinking about the 10,000 hours thing. I think that there's a heavy implication, and I did like the book, and I do enjoy the work of Malcolm Gladwell generally.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I remember reading is in it and being like, I don't know if that makes a ton of sense, is when he was talking about, like, he kind of treats mastery as like a destination. And it's like, oh, you've arrived. It's like, right, here you go. It's like, no, like even, okay, the greatest basketball player of all time, we'll just say it's LeBron James, right? LeBron James doesn't, like, he didn't become great and then be like, all right, I'm done practicing.
Right.
I'm only going to shoot in games now. Because he's got to, because he's got to have that continuous improvement, at the very least to maintain that mastery, but ideally is to continue to improve it, because there's it's not like a check box, you know what I mean? That's like, oh, I am a master, check. It's like you gotta maintain it and you gotta improve on it. So yeah, I think I buy that.
Yeah, so that's a little segment to leave you with there.
Thanks, Josey. Thanks very much, Josey. I appreciate that. That is going to do it for this episode of the RYLACast. We do thank you for spending a little bit of your day with us. Thanks to our friend Ken Wilson for being our guest. We do hope you'll go to our website, RYLA5810.org, and check out all the cool stuff going on there. And if you like this podcast and you want us to continue to make, like, I don't know, 69 more of them, then why don't you go and rate, subscribe, like it, share it on Facebook, do all those things, but maybe find an antiquated way of sharing the good news about the RYLAcast. And here with an antiquated way of telling people about the RYLAcast is Josey.
Well, thank you, Greg. And if I may delay the antiquated way for just one more moment, we have some breaking news in regards to the platform that this podcast appears on.
Do I need to, like, do you want me to insert like a breaking news sounder here?
Yeah, either like a breaking news or like a ham horn, like a bow bow bow.
I'm gonna do that. I will put something right here.
This podcast can now be found on YouTube Music.
Wow. Look at us.
And if you listen to this podcast on Google Podcasts, you have like 6 hours to download all of your podcasts and choose a new podcast vendor of your choice. Maybe you already knew that. Maybe you didn't, but you're welcome. And
Boy, we really are beating up on the Android people today, aren't we?
we really are. Not on purpose. I've been
Not on
receiving
purpose.
several emails.
You guys think you guys think we produced this show beforehand? Nah, we'll just show up and turn on the microphones. Done that 69 times now. Josey, thanks for your courage.
Well, sorry, I didn't. I know
Oh
I
my
keep.
gosh, I keep trying to get us out of here, and you won't let me.
You'd think in our 69th episode we'd have this down pat.
You'd think we'd have it nice by now, but we don't.
It's not nice. So, in antiquated way to tell your friend, in the spirit of our esteemed guest Ken Wilson, he mentioned he had some animals, and on a large ranch like that where you can almost free range, I would say that you lay out the food and the hay. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can either cut the grass to create the bales of hay, or you can lay out the food for the animals. Whatever you do, either cut or lay out the food in. Listen to the RYLACast, and depending on how small or big letters you choose, determines the view from the sky, if you will, for your paragliders, hang gliders, and things to see that, and then listen to the RYLACast as an antiquated way.
Josey, thanks for your courage.
Thanks, Craig.
Talk to you next time on the RYLACast.